They say you can't fall in love with a stranger in a single heartbeat. They say love needs time, trust, foundation. But standing in that crowded ballroom, watching him catch me as I collapsed, I learned that sometimes destiny doesn't wait for permission. Sometimes it grabs you by the throat and whispers, "This one. This is the one who will change everything." My name is Ethan Cross, and this is the story of how I fell, literally, into the arms of the most dangerous woman in Chicago, and how that single moment of weakness became the greatest strength I'd ever known. The music throbbed through the converted warehouse like a living thing, each beat reverberating through the exposed brick walls and rattling the champagne glasses that dotted every available surface. I shouldn't have been there, just another invisible face among Chicago's creative elite, another struggling artist pretending to belong. But when your college roommate lands a gig photographing one of the city's most exclusive art events and begs for an assistant, you don't say no. Not when you're 4 months behind on rent and your last meal was yesterday's gas station sandwich. "Just hold the light reflector and try to blend in," Marcus had said, squeezing my shoulder before disappearing into the crowd of designer suits and cocktail dresses, leaving me alone with equipment I barely understood how to operate. The champagne they'd offered the staff was cheap, nothing like the vintage bottles being poured freely for guests, but it hit my empty stomach with brutal efficiency. The room tilted slightly as I pressed my back against one of the industrial pillars, trying to steady myself. My borrowed black shirt hung loose around my waist. I'd lost weight again, the kind of weight loss that comes from choosing art supplies over groceries, ambition over sustenance. That's when I first saw her. She didn't move like the others. While the crowd flowed in chaotic eddies around the gallery space, she cut through like a blade, straight, purposeful, unstoppable. 2 men in dark suits flanked her, their eyes constantly scanning the room with professional vigilance. Her dress wasn't flashy like the other wealthy patrons, but something about the fabric caught the light differently, absorbing rather than reflecting. Silk, probably Italian, definitely custom-made. When she turned, I caught her profile. Sharp cheekbones, full lips painted deep red, dark hair swept up in an elegant twist that exposed the long line of her neck. Not classically beautiful in the magazine sense, but magnetic in a way that made everyone else in the room seem slightly out of focus. Something ancient in my brain whispered, "Danger." I looked away too late. Her gaze locked with mine across the crowded space, and for a moment, everything else blurred into insignificance. A half-smile appeared on her face, there and gone like a camera flash, and I felt naked, exposed, as if she'd reached across the distance and stripped away every carefully constructed defense to examine what lay beneath. "Move, would you?" Someone bumped into me roughly, spilling champagne down my borrowed shirt. The spell broke. I mumbled an apology, dabbing uselessly at the stain with a cocktail napkin. When I looked up again, she was gone, swallowed by the crowd as if she'd never been there at all. "Ethan, there you are." Marcus materialized beside me, camera hanging around his neck like a talisman. "I need you upstairs for the balcony shots. The client wants the whole gallery from above, wide-angle stuff." I followed him through the crowd to a service staircase tucked behind a curtain. The second floor was quieter, the music a distant pulse through the floorboards. We found a narrow walkway that overlooked the gallery space, perfect for the aerial shots Marcus wanted. "Hold this steady." He thrust the reflector into my hands. "And don't drop it. That thing costs more than your student loans." The joke hit too close to home. My stomach lurched as I positioned myself beside him, arms trembling slightly from exhaustion and hunger. Below, the party swirled in patterns of wealth and influence I'd never understand, art collectors and gallery owners, trust fund kids and self-made millionaires, all moving through a world I could observe but never truly enter. The champagne, the stress, the gnawing emptiness in my stomach, it all crashed over me in waves. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision like ink drops in water. "I need to sit down," I murmured, but my voice was lost beneath the music and conversation. The spots expanded, merging into a tunnel of darkness. The last thing I remembered was the reflector slipping from my fingers, Marcus shouting my name, and the terrifying sensation of falling forward into nothing. Then, blackness. I awoke to the scent of jasmine and something warmer, sandalwood, maybe, or amber wood. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, but I forced them open. The first thing I saw was not where but who. Her. The woman from the gallery. Her face hovered above mine, those sharp features even more striking up close. Deep-set eyes the color of dark honey studied me with unnerving intensity. I realized with a jolt of panic that I was cradled against her chest, her arm supporting my shoulders while her other hand rested protectively across my waist. Her skin was warm against mine, and I could feel the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "Don't move," she said, her voice lower than I'd expected, with a rough edge beneath the cultured tone. "You fainted. Hit your head on the railing." We were in a car. No, a limousine. The privacy divider was up, enclosing us in a cocoon of soft lighting and leather seats. Outside the tinted windows, Chicago slipped by in streaks of neon and shadow. "Where?" My voice cracked. I tried again. "Where are you taking me?" "Hospital." I struggled to sit up, panic giving me strength. "No. No hospitals. I can't afford." I bit my lip, embarrassment flooding through me. "I'm fine. It was just low blood sugar. Please, just let me out here." Her arm tightened around me, not painfully, but with unmistakable authority. "You hit your head when you fell. You need medical attention." Her eyes searched my face. "When was the last time you ate a real meal?" The question was so unexpected, so intimate, that I didn't know how to answer. "Who are you?" I managed instead, though I suspected I already knew. There had been whispers at the gallery about a guest no one dared approach directly, someone powerful enough to make gallery owners and art dealers nervous. She studied me for a long moment, as if weighing what to tell me. "Isabella Moretti," she finally said, not offering her hand, not adding any title or explanation. The name hit me like ice water. Everyone in Chicago knew the Moretti family. Officially, they owned luxury hotels and high-end restaurants throughout the city. Unofficially, they controlled much of Chicago's underworld, art theft, black market acquisitions, things whispered about but never proven. I'd read enough to know that law enforcement couldn't touch them. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Prosecutors suddenly dropped cases. I was alone in a car with a woman who could make people vanish. "Your friend, the photographer," she added, misreading my fear. "He's following in another car. He wanted to accompany you, but there wasn't room with my security detail." "I need to go home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Thank you for helping me, Ms. Moretti, but I'm really fine." Her lips curved slightly. "Isabella," she corrected. Then, with genuine curiosity, "What's your name?" Something told me lying would be dangerous. "Ethan. Ethan Cross." "Ethan," she repeated as if tasting the name, rolling it around her mouth like expensive wine. "You work for the event company?" "No, I was just helping my roommate Marcus. I'm a student at the Art Institute. Fine arts program." I was babbling now, words spilling out unchecked, filling the silence with nervous energy. "I graduate this spring. If I can afford the last semester's tuition." Her expression changed subtly, interest sharpening like a blade being honed. "You're an artist?" I nodded, not trusting my voice anymore. Why was she asking? Why did she care about anything beyond dropping me at the nearest emergency room? The car slowed, then stopped smoothly. We'd arrived at a private entrance to what looked like an upscale medical facility, nothing like the overcrowded public hospital I'd been imagining. Everything here spoke of money and discretion. "This is my family's medical center," Isabella explained, reading my confusion with unsettling accuracy. "They'll take care of you. Properly." Before I could protest again, the door opened. One of her security men stood waiting, his face professionally blank. With surprising gentleness, Isabella shifted me toward the door, but kept one arm firmly around my waist, taking most of my weight. "I can walk," I insisted weakly, my pride making one last stand. "Humor me," she replied, guiding me out of the car with practiced ease, as if she carried half-conscious men regularly. Inside, everything happened with efficient speed. I was taken to an examination room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a hospital. A doctor appeared, A woman in her 50s with kind eyes but a nervous energy that suggested Isabella's presence made her anxious. Likely just dehydration and low blood sugar, the doctor told Isabella after examining me, speaking to her rather than to me. But we'll run some tests to rule out concussion. Isabella nodded. Do whatever is necessary. I'll wait. That's really not, I began. But she cut me off with a look. I'll wait, she repeated, this time to me, and something in her tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. After blood draws and a quick CT scan, the doctor confirmed her initial assessment. You need rest, proper nutrition, and fluids, she told me, finally addressing me directly. I'm prescribing some vitamins and setting up a follow-up appointment. I can't afford, I started to say automatically. It's taken care of, Isabella interrupted. She'd stayed nearby throughout the entire process, making calls in hushed Italian that I couldn't understand, her presence filling whatever room she occupied. When the doctor left, Isabella approached my bedside. When was the last time you ate a proper meal, Ethan Cross? The question caught me off guard. I looked down at my hands, avoiding her penetrating gaze. Yesterday? Maybe the day before. Something flashed across her face, anger, but not directed at me. That ends now. A nurse appeared with discharge papers. As I signed them, I noticed all billing information had been blacked out, no amounts visible. Isabella guided me back to the waiting limousine, her hand at the small of my back, not forcing, but unmistakably present, proprietary almost. Inside the car, she handed me a paper bag. You need to eat something before taking the medication. Inside was a gourmet sandwich from some upscale deli and bottled water that probably cost more than my usual meals. My hunger overwhelmed my pride, and I ate quickly, acutely aware of her eyes on me, watching with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable but instead felt oddly protective. Your roommate has been informed you're safe and will be brought home soon, she said once I'd finished eating. He was quite concerned about you. Relief washed through me. At least Marcus knew where I was, that I hadn't just disappeared into the Chicago night. Thank you, I said softly, meaning it. For everything. But you really didn't have to do all this. Yes, she said simply, meeting my eyes. I did. The car stopped outside my apartment building in a rough neighborhood on the south side, a rundown walk-up that looked especially shabby after the luxury I'd just experienced. Isabella frowned as she took in the graffiti-covered entrance, the broken security door hanging at an angle. This is where you live. I bristled despite myself, despite knowing she could probably buy my entire building with pocket change. Not everyone can afford Gold Coast penthouses, Ms. Moretti. She didn't respond to my defensive tone. Instead, she reached into her jacket and withdrew a business card, simple cream-colored stock with just her name and a phone number embossed in black ink. She pressed it into my palm, her fingers lingering against mine, warm and surprisingly gentle. If you need anything at all, you call this number. It reaches me directly. I stared at the card, confusion warring with curiosity. Why would you? I have a proposition for you, she cut in, her voice taking on a businesslike quality. Your artwork. I collect pieces from emerging artists. I'd like to see your work. Her eyes held mine with magnetic intensity. Think about it. Call the number when you're ready. One of her security men opened my door. Before I could step out, Isabella leaned closer, and the scent of her perfume enveloped me, making my head spin worse than the champagne had. Rest, Ethan, she said, her voice low near my ear, intimate in a way that sent shivers down my spine. We'll speak again soon. I managed to nod, then escaped the intensity of her presence, my legs unsteady as I fumbled with my keys at the building's entrance. The limousine remained idling at the curb, and I could feel her watching me. Only when I was safely inside did it pull away, disappearing into the Chicago night like something from a fever dream. Upstairs, I found Marcus pacing our tiny living room, his usual calm completely shattered. Thin, oh my God. He threw his arms around me in a tight hug. Are you okay? When you fell, I thought, and then she just appeared out of nowhere and caught you before you hit the ground. She wouldn't let anyone else touch you. Carried you out herself like you weighed nothing. My mind reeled, trying to process this information. What? She caught me? You don't remember? Marcus pulled back to look at my face. You started to collapse and I screamed, and suddenly she was just there, like she'd been watching you the whole time. She caught you before you could hit the floor, held you like... He shook his head. Do you know who that was? I sank onto our threadbare couch, the business card still clutched in my hand. Isabella Moretti. Marcus's face paled dramatically. The Isabella Moretti? Holy shit, Ethan. Those guys with her, they blocked anyone from following you. One of them told me you were being taken care of and gave me a number to call for updates. I've been getting text messages about your condition every 30 minutes. I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. She wants to see my artwork. What? Marcus sat beside me, grabbing my arm. Are you serious? She said she collects pieces from emerging artists. Even saying it aloud sounded absurd, like something from a movie rather than real life. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression shifting from excitement to concern. Ethan, be careful. Women like that, they don't just help random guys out of kindness. They always want something. I thought about the way she'd looked at me, the gentle way she'd held me, the authority in her voice when she said, "That ends now," about my not eating. The way her fingers had lingered when she'd given me her card. I know, I whispered. But later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her business card on my nightstand catching the streetlight from outside, I couldn't stop thinking about the moment when I'd first opened my eyes in her arms. Her face hovering above mine, those honey-colored eyes searching my face as if memorizing every detail. In my half-conscious state, just before fully waking, I could have sworn I'd heard her whisper something as she held me, a single word that made no sense, that I must have imagined. 4 days passed before I found the courage to call the number on Isabella's card. 4 days of Marcus alternating between excitement. Do you know how much collectors like her pay for art? And concern, just be careful, man. People like her always want something in return. For days of trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whispered word, the intensity in her eyes, the way my heart had raced when she'd leaned close in the car. My finger hovered over the call button for nearly 15 minutes before I finally pressed it, my hands sweating despite the cool evening air coming through my window. The phone rang twice before a deep male voice answered. Mr. Cross, the man said, not a question but a statement. My stomach dropped. How did they know it was me? I hadn't even identified myself, hadn't given my name to any caller ID system. Before I could respond, there was a rustling sound, voices speaking quickly in Italian. Then Isabella's voice came through the speaker, sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. Ethan, she said, and somehow the way she pronounced my name made it sound like something precious, something worth savoring. I was beginning to think you wouldn't call. My voice caught. I cleared my throat and tried again, forcing the words out. I've been thinking about your offer. To see my artwork. Good. There was satisfaction in her voice, almost possessive. Are you free tomorrow afternoon? The question caught me off guard. I'd expected more preamble, perhaps a formal gallery appointment, some professional distance. Yes. I don't have classes on Thursdays. Perfect. My driver will collect you at 2. It wasn't a request, I realized. It was a statement of fact. Bring samples of your work, whatever you consider your best pieces. Ms. Moretti. Isabella, she corrected, just as she had in the car. Isabella, I repeated, the name feeling foreign on my tongue, too intimate for someone I barely knew. I don't think I can transport my larger canvases. I work primarily in mixed media and some of my pieces are quite big. There was a pause, and I could almost feel her recalibrating, adjusting her plans. Where do you work? Do you have a studio? Just my bedroom, I admitted, embarrassment warming my cheeks even though she couldn't see me. I had studio space at school, but I couldn't afford the fees this semester. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had an edge to it, something sharp beneath the smooth surface. Give me your address. I'll come to you. Alarm bells rang in my head. A woman like Isabella Moretti in our shabby apartment, seeing exactly how I lived, how far I'd fallen. That's not necessary. It is, she cut me off gently but firmly. If I'm to properly evaluate your work, I need to see it in its entirety, not just samples. I need to see where you create. I swallowed hard. There was no graceful way to refuse without losing this opportunity completely. And despite my apprehension, despite every warning sign, a part of me, the part that had been creating art in obscurity for years, desperately wanted someone to see my work. Really see it. Not just glance at it politely but truly understand what I was trying to say. Okay, I said finally, giving her my address, though she probably already had it from the hospital paperwork. 2 o'clock tomorrow, she confirmed. And Ethan? Yes. Eat something today. A real meal. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, equal parts irritated and intrigued by her commanding tone. Who tells a stranger to eat? But then again, she had seen me at my worst, fainting from hunger, vulnerable and humiliated. Maybe she had earned the right to care, in her own bossy way. That evening, I spent hours cleaning our apartment, then rearranging my paintings to create a makeshift gallery in our small living room. Marcus helped, moving furniture to make more space, hanging pieces on every available wall with the careful eye of a professional photographer. You know, he said, stepping back to examine a large canvas depicting a man dissolving into storm clouds, these are really good, Ethan. Like, seriously exceptional. I know I've said it before, but seeing them all together like this? He whistled low. No wonder she wants to see them. She hasn't seen them yet, I reminded him, anxiety churning in my stomach like acid. She's probably just being polite because of what happened at the gallery. Marcus gave me a skeptical look. Women like Isabella Moretti don't do anything out of politeness. They do things because they want something. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Just promise me you'll be careful tomorrow. Don't let yourself be alone with her. We'll be right here in the living room, I assured him, though the thought of being alone with her sent contradictory pulses of fear and anticipation through my body, confusing and intoxicating in equal measure. I'll try to come home early from the shoot, Marcus promised. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, felt the phantom sensation of her arms around me, heard that whispered word that I'd probably imagined. By morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes, and no amount of cold water could hide my exhaustion. At precisely 2 o'clock, a sharp knock came at our door. My heart hammered against my ribs as I crossed the living room, wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans before opening the door. Isabella filled the doorframe, taller than I remembered in her heels, dressed in a charcoal pantsuit that probably cost more than a year of my rent. Behind her stood one of her security men, his face professionally expressionless, a human wall between her and the world. Ethan, Isabella said, her eyes sweeping over me in a quick assessment that missed nothing, not the nervous fidget of my hands, not the dark circles under my eyes, not the way my breath caught when our eyes met. You didn't sleep. Not a question. A statement of fact. I stepped back, allowing her to enter our shabby apartment. I was preparing, I said, gesturing to the living room where my paintings were displayed, my life's work laid bare for judgment. She nodded to her security man, who took up position outside our closed door, a silent guardian. Then she turned her full attention to the room, to my art, and I felt stripped naked under her gaze. I watched her face as she moved slowly from piece to piece, studying each with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. For several minutes, she said nothing, just moved methodically around the room, and I hovered anxiously, waiting for some reaction, some indication of what she thought. Finally, she stopped before my largest canvas, a dark cityscape with a single illuminated window, a solitary figure silhouetted against the light, reaching toward something unseen. This one, she said, turning to me, and I saw something shift in her expression. Tell me about it. I moved closer, maintaining what I hoped was a safe distance. It's called Witness. It's about urban isolation. How we can be surrounded by millions of people but still be completely alone. How we watch each other from a distance but rarely connect, rarely truly see one another. She studied me with the same intensity she'd given the painting, as if I were another piece of art to be evaluated and understood. You feel this way? Isolated? The question felt too personal, too intimate for someone I just met. But something in her gaze compelled honesty, pulled truth from me like water from a well. Sometimes. Don't we all? No, she said simply, holding my gaze. Not all of us. She turned back to the painting. How much? I blinked, caught completely off guard. I'm sorry. How much for this piece? My mind went blank. I'd sold a few small paintings through student exhibitions, but nothing this size, nothing this personal, nothing that exposed this much of my soul. I don't know. I hadn't thought about selling it. Isabella turned to me fully, her expression unreadable, carefully neutral. Everything has a price, Ethan. Name yours. Something about her phrasing sent a shiver through me, a double meaning I couldn't quite grasp. 5,000. I blurted out, naming a figure that seemed outrageous to me, impossibly high. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. That's severely undervalued. She reached into her jacket and withdrew a leather checkbook, expensive and well-worn. 20,000. I gasped, the sound embarrassingly loud in the quiet room. That's too much. It's not worth. I decide what things are worth to me, she interrupted, already writing the check with confident strokes. And I want this piece. Along with those two. She nodded toward a pair of smaller canvases, one of a man with his back turned, looking out over turbulent water, another of hands reaching through darkness toward a single point of light, almost touching but not quite. Those as well, she continued, still writing. 10,000 each. I felt dizzy, the room tilting slightly. This couldn't be real. That's 40,000 total. She tore out the check and held it out to me, her eyes never leaving mine. My hand trembled as I took the check, staring at the amount written in bold, confident strokes. This was more money than I'd ever seen at once. Enough for tuition, rent, supplies for a year or more. Enough to breathe, to create without the constant weight of financial panic. Why? I managed to ask, looking up at her, searching her face for answers. Why are you doing this? Isabella studied me for a long moment, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. Because your work speaks to me. Because you have talent that deserves recognition, that deserves to be seen. She paused. And because I want them. There was something beneath her words, something unspoken that hung in the air between us like smoke, substantial but impossible to grasp. Before I could decipher it, she moved closer, stepping into my personal space, not touching me, but near enough that I could smell her perfume, feel the heat radiating from her body. You're not eating properly, she said, her voice low, almost tender. You're still too thin. I crossed my arms defensively, a barrier between us. I eat enough. No, you don't. Her eyes narrowed, and I saw genuine concern there, mixed with something darker, more possessive. And you're not sleeping. Are you always this careless with yourself? Irritation flared, hot and unexpected. With all due respect, Ms. Moretti. Isabella. Isabella, I corrected, meeting her gaze despite the intimidating intensity one found there. My eating and sleeping habits are none of your concern. Something dangerous flashed in her eyes, there and gone in an instant, too quick to fully identify. They became my concern the moment you collapsed in my arms, Ethan. Her voice had dropped even lower, intimate and commanding at once. The moment I felt how light you were, how fragile. The memory of that moment, of waking in her embrace, disoriented and vulnerable, sent heat through my body, confusing and intense. That was an unusual circumstance. It won't happen again. She stepped even closer, and this time her hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek in a touch so light it might have been imagined, ghost-like and electric. See that it doesn't, she murmured, her eyes locked on mine. I won't always be there to catch you. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the sensation of her fingertips against my skin, the way my heart was racing, the way everything in me wanted to lean into her touch. When she withdrew her hand, it felt like losing something essential, something I'd been searching for without knowing it. I'll send people to collect the paintings tomorrow, she said, her tone shifting to businesslike efficiency with jarring speed. In the meantime, use some of that money to eat a proper meal. And get some rest. I nodded, still clutching the check like a lifeline, my mind spinning. I have a gallery opening next Friday evening, she continued, reaching into her pocket to produce a cream-colored envelope. A private showing for a new artist I'm sponsoring. I'd like you to attend. Me? The word came out higher than intended. Why? Because I think you'll find it educational. Her eyes traveled over me again, more deliberately this time, assessing and appreciating. And because I want you there. Again, not a request. A statement of desire that left no room for refusal. I took the envelope, our fingers brushing in the exchange, that same electric current passing between us. I don't have anything to wear to that kind of event. A small smile curved her lips, transforming her face from merely striking to genuinely beautiful. That's been taken care of as well. What do you mean? You'll see. She moved to the door, opening it to reveal her waiting security man. Friday, 8 o'clock. And Ethan? I looked up at her, this powerful woman who had entered my life like a storm. Eat something substantial before then. Then she was gone, leaving behind the lingering scent of her perfume, a check for $40,000, and 1,000 unanswered questions swirling in my mind. I sank onto the couch, staring at the check in my hand. It felt surreal, like something from a dream or a nightmare. I wasn't sure which. What did she really want from me? Women like Isabella Moretti didn't pay $40,000 for paintings from unknown artists without expecting something in return. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sorry, shoot running late. Everything okay? Is she still there? I typed back, she's gone. She bought 3 paintings for $40,000. His response came instantly. What? OMG, are you serious? Before I could reply, another text appeared. Wait, what does she want in return? The same question spinning through my own mind, over and over like a prayer or a curse. What did Isabella Moretti want from me? And why did the intensity in her eyes, the gentleness of her touch, make me almost not care about the answer? 3 hours later, as I was still trying to process everything, still staring at the check as if it might disappear, a delivery arrived. A large black box tied with a silver ribbon, expensive and mysterious. The delivery person refused to tell me who it was from, but I already knew. Only one person would send something like this. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, lay a suit of deep charcoal gray, the fabric catching the light like water, clearly bespoke and probably worth more than my entire wardrobe combined. Alongside it was a smaller box containing a silk tie, designer shoes that looked Italian and expensive, and accessories I'd never owned but somehow knew how to use. At the bottom was a card with a single line written in strong, slanted handwriting. For Friday. Wear your hair down. I ran my fingers over the suit jacket, the fabric smooth and cool against my skin. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever owned, and it probably cost more than 3 months of rent. This was dangerous. She was dangerous. Everything about this situation screamed at me to run, to tear up the check, return the suit, forget Isabella Moretti and her intensity, her unexpected gentleness, her commanding presence that made me feel simultaneously terrified and seen. Instead, I found myself lifting the jacket from its box, holding it against my body as I looked in the mirror. It would fit perfectly, as if she'd somehow known my exact measurements, as if she'd studied me that closely. The thought should have frightened me. Instead, I felt a thrill run through me, a dangerous, forbidden excitement at being seen, truly seen, by someone like her. Friday suddenly seemed very far away, and yet not far enough. The next morning, I deposited the check, half expecting it to bounce despite knowing it wouldn't. A woman like Isabella Moretti didn't write bad checks. By afternoon, the funds had cleared, more money than I'd ever had at once, sitting in my account like a small miracle. I paid my outstanding tuition balance first, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I'd been carrying for months. Then I bought proper art supplies, not the cheap student-grade materials I'd been making do with, but professional quality oils, canvases, brushes that felt like extensions of my hand. I set aside money for rent, bought actual groceries, and still, most of the money remained. A strange security I'd never known before, breathing room I'd forgotten existed. True to her word, men came for the paintings the next day. They handled my work with professional care, wrapping each piece meticulously before carrying them away like precious artifacts. They left me with a receipt and another business card, this one for an art gallery in River North. The owner's name, Catherine Walsh, was circled in that same strong handwriting. "She's expecting your call." That evening, as I sat on our fire escape sketching the sunset, trying to process everything that had happened, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Mr. Cross," a woman's voice asked when I answered, cultured and cool. "Yes. This is Sophia Moretti, Isabella's sister." My pencil froze mid-stroke. I hadn't even known Isabella had a sister. "Oh, hello. My sister asked me to call you," Sophia continued, her voice pleasant but carrying an undertone of assessment. "She mentioned you might need assistance preparing for Friday's event." "That's not necessary," I started to say. "It wasn't a suggestion," she cut in smoothly, though not unkindly. "Isabella rarely takes an interest in new artists. When she does, the family supports her decision. I'll pick you up tomorrow at noon. We'll have lunch, then visit my personal tailor." Like her sister, Sophia Moretti didn't make requests. She stated what would happen and expected compliance. Before I could formulate a response, she added, more softly, "She told me about your work. I'd like to see it for myself sometime, if you'd allow that." "Of course," I managed, thrown off balance by the unexpected gentleness. "Good. Noon tomorrow then." She hung up before I could say anything else. I stared at my phone, then out at the darkening Chicago skyline. What was happening to my life? A week ago, I was just another struggling art student, invisible and forgettable, one missed payment away from dropping out. Now I'd caught the attention of one of Chicago's most powerful and dangerous families. All because I'd fainted at a gallery event. All because Isabella Moretti had caught me as I fell. All because she'd whispered that single, inexplicable word as I lay unconscious in her arms. Sophia Moretti was nothing like her sister. Where Isabella emanated danger and intensity, Sophia was all polish and diplomatic charm. She arrived in a sleek silver Mercedes, not a limousine, with only a driver and no visible security detail. Her handshake was firm, her smile carefully calibrated, her designer outfit impeccable without being flashy. Everything about her spoke of old money and careful cultivation. "You're younger than I expected," she said, appraising me as we settled into the back seat. "Isabella said you were thin, but I assumed she was exaggerating. She tends toward the dramatic." I shifted uncomfortably, hyper-aware of how shabby I must look compared to her effortless elegance. "I've been busy with school. Sometimes I forget to eat." Sophia raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. A dangerous habit, especially around my sister. "What do you mean?" "Isabella has protective instincts," Sophia said, studying me with eyes the same honey color as her sister's but somehow colder, more calculating. "She doesn't like seeing vulnerability without addressing it. It triggers something in her." The car glided through Chicago traffic with the frictionless ease of extreme wealth. We arrived at a discreet restaurant in the Gold Coast where the maitre d' greeted Sophia by name and led us to a private dining room overlooking Lake Michigan. "So," Sophia said once we were seated and wine had been poured into crystal glasses that probably cost more than my monthly rent, "tell me about your art." "Didn't Isabella already tell you?" I asked, testing the boundaries of this strange conversation. "I'd prefer to hear it from you." I described my work, my techniques, my inspirations, the way urban isolation had always fascinated me, the disconnect between proximity and connection. As I spoke, Sophia watched me with an analytical gaze that missed nothing, cataloging every gesture, every word choice. She asked specific, knowledgeable questions that revealed her own extensive art background, her understanding of technique and vision that went far beyond casual appreciation. "You're talented," she concluded as our main course arrived, some kind of delicate fish I couldn't identify but that melted on my tongue. But talent alone doesn't explain my sister's interest. I set down my fork carefully. What does that mean? Sophia took a sip of wine, considering her words with the care of someone used to navigating dangerous conversational territory. Isabella doesn't collect art for status or investment, though she's shrewd about both. She collects pieces that speak to her on a deeply personal level. She leaned forward slightly. The fact that she purchased 3 of your works at once, and for those prices, is unusual. Unprecedented, actually. I got the impression she overpaid significantly, I admitted. Oh, she absolutely did. Sophia waved a dismissive hand, elegant and unconcerned. But money means nothing to her. Your paintings contained something she wanted to possess, something she needed to own. A chill ran through me at her phrasing, the possessiveness implicit in the words. I just paint what I see and feel. And what my sister saw in your work resonated with her. Sophia studied me again, and I felt like a specimen under a microscope. What happened at the gallery event? Isabella told me you fainted, but she was unusually vague about the details. I described the night, ending with waking up in Isabella's arms in the limousine. I omitted the whispered word. It felt too private, too confusing to share, even with her sister. Sophia listened intently, her expression revealing nothing. When I finished, she nodded slowly. And now she's invited you to Friday's opening as her personal guest. Is that significant? Isabella doesn't bring guests to business events, Sophia said carefully. Ever. She keeps her professional and personal lives completely separate. The implications hung between us, heavy and undeniable. I pushed my half-eaten food around my plate, appetite suddenly gone despite how delicious everything was. I don't understand what she wants from me. Sophia's expression softened fractionally, the first genuine warmth I'd seen from her. Neither does she, I suspect. And that terrifies her. Isabella doesn't strike me as someone who gets terrified easily. She doesn't. Sophia reached for her purse, signaling the end of our meal. Which should tell you something about the effect you're having on her. Come, we have appointments to keep. The rest of the afternoon passed in a whirlwind of luxury I'd never experienced. Sophia's personal tailor worked on adjusting the suit Isabella had sent, ensuring it fit perfectly. A barber styled my hair, teaching me how to maintain the look. Sophia supervised everything with crisp efficiency, occasionally stepping away for hushed phone calls in rapid Italian. By 5 o'clock, I barely recognized myself in the salon mirror. My usually unruly hair had been tamed into something deliberately casual but polished. I looked like someone who belonged in Isabella's world, at least superficially. Isabella was right about your bone structure, Sophia commented as we returned to the car. You clean up remarkably well. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or an observation. Thank you for today, I said genuinely. For everything. She waved my gratitude away. This isn't charity, Ethan. When a Moretti shows interest in something, or someone, we protect that interest. She handed me a small shopping bag containing grooming products and accessories. Friday is important to Isabella. Important people will be there. Don't embarrass her. I'll do my best, I said stiffly, bristling at the implicit threat. Sophia's expression thawed slightly. That came out harsher than intended. What I meant was, be yourself, but the best version. The version I've seen glimpses of today. Her tone softened further. My sister doesn't extend herself for just anyone, Ethan. There must be something special about you. Before I could respond, the car stopped outside my building. Sophia's eyes narrowed at the graffiti-covered entrance, the broken security door. This neighborhood isn't safe. It's all I can afford, I said, though that wasn't entirely true anymore. Thanks to Isabella, I could afford better. I just hadn't processed that reality yet. Thank you again for today. Sophia nodded, her expression unreadable. As I reached for the door handle, she spoke again. Ethan, one more thing. I turned back. Yes. Be careful with Isabella, she said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle, almost concerned. Not because she would hurt you intentionally, but because she doesn't know how to care for delicate things without overwhelming them. She takes what she wants with both hands and doesn't always realize her own strength. The warning stayed with me for the next 3 days, echoing in my mind as I tried to focus on schoolwork and not on the approaching Friday evening. Sophia had given me a glimpse into Isabella's world, a world of wealth, power, and unspoken rules I didn't understand. Friday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread that made my stomach churn. I spent hours getting ready, following Sophia's instructions meticulously. When I finally stepped into the charcoal suit, it fit as if created specifically for my body, the jacket emphasizing my shoulders, the pants hanging perfectly. The silk tie felt like water against my throat. I stared at myself in the mirror and saw a stranger, someone who looked like he belonged in Isabella's world, at least on the surface. At precisely 8 o'clock, a knock came at the door. I opened it expecting a driver, but found Isabella herself standing there. For a moment, she simply looked at me, her expression shifting subtly from appreciation to something deeper, more possessive, almost hungry. "Beautiful," she said finally, the single word carrying more weight than elaborate praise ever could. I flushed under her scrutiny, heat creeping up my neck. "Thank you. And thank you for the suit. You shouldn't have." "I wanted to," she cut in, stepping closer. "It suits you perfectly." In the sleek black limousine, Isabella sat closer than necessary, her thigh occasionally brushing mine when the car turned. She wore a deep burgundy dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow, and she smelled of that same jasmine perfume, mingled with something distinctly her. "Sophia tells me you had a productive day together," she said, her eyes moving over me in that assessing way that made my skin tingle with awareness. "She was very helpful," I said. Then, hesitantly, "She seems protective of you." A slight smile curved Isabella's lips. "My sister sees herself as the family diplomat. She smooths the way, manages expectations." Her hand moved to rest beside mine on the seat, not touching but close enough that I could feel its heat. "Did she warn you about me?" The directness of the question startled me into honesty. "Yes. And yet you're here." Not a question, but a statement tinged with satisfaction. "I'm curious," I admitted, unable to look away from her intense gaze. "About the gallery, about your world, about why you're doing all this." She studied me for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. A wall coming down, perhaps, or a door opening. "Curiosity can be dangerous, Ethan." "So I've heard." Her smile widened fractionally, genuine warmth breaking through her usual reserve. "Sophia approves of you, despite her warnings. That's rare. She usually sees through people immediately and finds them wanting." The gallery was in a converted warehouse in the West Loop, industrial chic with exposed brick, dramatic lighting, and art that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. As we entered, conversations paused. Heads turned. I felt the weight of dozens of eyes assessing me, wondering who I was, why I was with Isabella Moretti. Isabella's hand settled on the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd with proprietary ease. People nodded deferentially as we passed, their eyes curious, sometimes suspicious, as they took in my presence at her side. "They're wondering who you are," Isabella murmured close to my ear, her breath warm against my skin. "Who am I?" I asked, the question more loaded than I'd intended. Her hand pressed slightly firmer against my back, possessive and protective at once. "Tonight you're with me. That's all they need to know." The artist being featured was a young sculptor whose work featured twisted metal forms that somehow conveyed both violence and fragility, beauty emerging from destruction. Isabella introduced me to her, a nervous woman not much older than me who kept glancing at Isabella with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Your work is incredible," I told her sincerely, studying a piece that looked like wings made of shattered glass and steel. "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft. "Isabella saved my career. I was working as a waitress, creating pieces in my apartment when she saw one of my sculptures at a street fair." She lowered her voice, glancing at Isabella who was speaking with a gallery owner nearby. "She bought everything I had, then set up this showing, introduced me to collectors who actually matter. I don't know why she chose me, but I'm grateful." I glanced at Isabella, who was listening to the gallery owner but somehow, I knew, could hear every word of our conversation. Why would she do that? I asked. The sculptor shrugged, her expression vulnerable. She said my work reminded her of how beauty can emerge from destruction, how strength can come from brokenness. She looked around at the crowded gallery, at the red sold stickers already appearing beside most pieces. Whatever her reasons, she changed my life. Throughout the evening, Isabella kept me close, her hand returning to my back whenever we moved through the crowd. She introduced me to selected people, gallery owners, collectors, other artists, but deflected questions about my relationship to her with practiced ease. "Ethan is a talented painter," she would say, her voice allowing no room for follow-up questions. "You'll be seeing his work soon enough." By the time we left, my head was spinning from champagne and information overload, from the intensity of being constantly at Isabella's side, of feeling her attention on me even when she was speaking with others. The limousine waited at the curb, and Isabella helped me inside with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the commanding presence she'd projected all evening. "What did you think?" she asked as the car pulled away, Chicago's nightscape sliding past the tinted windows. "It was enlightening," I said carefully. "Everyone seems afraid of you. Even the artist you're helping." Isabella didn't deny it, and I appreciated her honesty. Fear and respect often look similar from the outside. "Which do you prefer?" Her eyes gleamed in the dimly lit interior. "From most people, either is acceptable. Both are useful." She shifted closer, the movement deliberate and unmistakable. "From you? Neither." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you want from me, Isabella?" She studied me for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. Then she reached out, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw with feather-light precision, sending electricity through my nerve endings. "Everything," she said simply, and the word hung between us, heavy with implication. "Everything." My pulse quickened as her fingers continued their gentle exploration, tracing from my jaw down to the hollow of my throat where my heartbeat betrayed my reaction to her touch. "You don't even know me," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my racing heart. "I know enough." Her voice had dropped lower, rougher at the edges, revealing something raw beneath her usual control. "I know your talent, your struggle, your strength. I've seen how you fight to survive in a world that wants to break you down." Her hand moved to cup my cheek, warm and possessive. "And I know that from the moment I caught you as you fell, something changed. Something shifted inside me." I couldn't look away from her gaze, couldn't pretend I didn't feel the electric current running between us, crackling in the air. "For you or for me?" "Both." Isabella leaned closer, her breath warm against my lips, and I could smell champagne and something darker, more intoxicating. "Tell me you don't feel it too, Ethan. Tell me and I'll stop. I'll take you home and we'll keep this strictly professional." The invitation to refuse was there, genuine despite the power she held over me in so many ways, financial, professional, social. I could end this now with a single word. I could step back from whatever cliff we were approaching. Instead, I found myself closing the distance between us, my lips meeting hers in a kiss that started tentative but quickly blazed into something desperate and consuming, years of loneliness and invisibility burning away in the heat of her attention. Her hand slid into my hair, cradling my head as she deepened the kiss, and I tasted expensive champagne and something uniquely her. My fingers clutched at the silk of her dress, anchoring myself against the sensation of falling all over again, but this time willingly, deliberately. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, her eyes had darkened to molten honey, and I saw something in them I'd never seen directed at me before, pure, undisguised want. "Come home with me," she said, the word somewhere between a question and a command, and I knew my answer would change everything. Warning bells rang in my head. Sophia's caution echoed. She doesn't know how to care for delicate things without overwhelming them. Yet I found myself nodding, unable to deny the pull between us, unable to walk away from whatever this was becoming. "Yes." Isabella pressed a button on the console beside her, murmured something in Italian to the driver, then drew me back into her arms. The rest of the ride passed in a blur of heated kisses and exploring touches, her hands respectful yet possessive, always stopping just short of crossing invisible boundaries, building anticipation until I thought I might combust from wanting. Her home was not what I expected. Instead of a sterile penthouse, the limousine delivered us to a converted firehouse in Lincoln Park, historic brick and modern glass merged seamlessly. Security was everywhere but discreet, men nodding respectfully as Isabella guided me through a private entrance and into an elevator that required both a key card and fingerprint scan. "I value my privacy," she explained, noting my surprise at the security measures. The elevator opened directly into her apartment, and I stepped into a space that stole my breath. High ceilings with exposed beams, original brick walls softened by strategic lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city beyond. But what truly caught my attention was the art. Dozens of pieces thoughtfully arranged throughout the sprawling space. Paintings, sculptures, installations. Some by artists I recognized, others unfamiliar. And there, in a place of honor on the main wall, perfectly lit and beautifully displayed, were my 3 paintings. "You displayed them," I said softly, moving closer, seeing my work in this new context and barely recognizing it as mine. Here, they looked important, valuable, worthy of attention. Isabella came up behind me, her hands settling lightly on my shoulders, warm through the fabric of my shirt. Of course, art should be seen, appreciated, lived with. Her thumb traced small circles against the base of my neck. "Like you." I turned in her embrace, studying her face in the soft lighting. "Why me, Isabella? With your resources, your connections, you could have anyone. Why a struggling artist from the South Side?" Her expression softened, and I saw vulnerability there that I suspected few people ever witnessed. "Because you're real," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising tenderness. "In my world, authenticity is rare and precious. You create beauty from pain without artifice or pretension. You've survived hardship without becoming hard or cynical. You're—" She paused, searching for words. "You're like finding something valuable everyone else walked past without seeing." "You barely know me," I protested, though the words sounded weak even to my own ears. "I know what matters." She led me to a leather sofa, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. When she handed me a glass, our fingers touched, and I felt that now familiar electric spark. "When I caught you that night when you were unconscious in my arms, you seemed so fragile. But there was something in your face, a strength beneath the vulnerability that moved me." She settled beside me on the sofa, close enough that our thighs touched. "Then I saw your art and understood. You transform vulnerability into power. That's rare, Tin. That's precious." I sipped the liquid, whiskey, smooth and expensive, while processing her words, trying to understand what was happening between us. "And what do you transform, Isabella? What pain shapes your world?" Something dangerous flashed in her eyes, there and gone like lightning. "You ask dangerous questions." "You invited me here," I countered, emboldened by the whiskey and her proximity. "If I'm going to enter your world, shouldn't I know what drives you?" Isabella set down her glass, moved even closer until our knees touched, until I could see gold flecks in her honey-colored eyes. "My family built an empire from nothing. We came here with empty pockets and determination. We protect what's ours." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Sometimes that requires difficult choices, actions that exist in moral gray areas. Is that why people fear you? They fear what they don't understand. They fear power they don't possess." Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining with surprising gentleness. "But you, Ethan, you should never fear me." "Should I fear being with you?" I asked, the question more vulnerable than I'd intended. Her grip tightened slightly, possessive and protective at once. "With me you'll always be safe. I protect what's mine." There was that word again, mine, and this time it didn't frighten me the way it should have. I finished my drink, the alcohol warming my blood, lowering defenses I hadn't realized I'd constructed. My exhaustion from the week, from the emotional intensity, suddenly caught up with me. "You're tired," Isabella observed, taking the empty glass from my hand. It's been an overwhelming evening. I started to protest, then realized she was right. The adrenaline that had been sustaining me was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She stood, pulling me gently to my feet. "Come," she said, leading me through the apartment to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft grays and whites that soothed my overstimulated senses. I blinked in surprise, having assumed her invitation home held different implications. "You're not." A small smile touched her lips. "I don't rush what's important, Ethan." She brushed her fingers against my cheek, the gesture so tender it made my chest ache. "And this, is important to me." She showed me the attached bathroom, pointed out sleep clothes laid out on the bed, soft cotton that looked expensive and comfortable. "My assistant anticipated you might stay. Everything you need should be here." She moved to the door, paused with her hand on the frame. "If you need anything, I'm just down the hall." Before she could leave, I caught her hand, the question that had been haunting me finally forcing its way out. "Isabella, that night when I fainted, when you caught me, did you say something to me?" Her expression stilled, became carefully neutral. "What do you think you heard?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "It sounded like, mine." "But that doesn't make sense." Isabella studied me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her eyes, a decision being made. Then she stepped closer, her hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. "Sleep, Ethan. We'll talk tomorrow." She pressed a kiss to my forehead, and then she was gone, closing the door softly behind her, neither confirming nor denying what I'd heard. I stood frozen, more confused than ever. But something in her reaction told me I hadn't imagined it. I'd heard correctly. But what could it possibly mean? The sleep clothes fit perfectly, like everything else Isabella had provided. I slipped between silk sheets, my body exhausted but my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Despite my mental turmoil, sleep claimed me quickly, deep and dreamless. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the scent of coffee, rich and dark. For a moment, I was disoriented by the luxurious surroundings. Then memories flooded back. The gallery, the limousine, Isabella's kiss, her mysterious non-answer to my question about that whispered word. After showering in the marble bathroom stocked with expensive toiletries, I found clothes laid out, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that fit as if made for me. The thought was both comforting and unsettling. How much had Isabella planned? How long had she been thinking about me? I followed the coffee scent to a gourmet kitchen where I found not Isabella, but a middle-aged woman preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Mr. Cross," she said with a slight accent, Eastern European, perhaps. "Ms. Moretti had to step out for a business matter, but she asked me to make you comfortable. Breakfast will be ready in 5 minutes." "Thank you." I accepted the coffee she offered, wandered to the windows while I waited. The view was spectacular, Lincoln Park spread below like a living painting, Lake Michigan glittering in the morning sun beyond. My phone buzzed in the pocket of yesterday's pants, which had been neatly folded on a chair. A text from Marcus. Where are you? Didn't come home last night? Are you okay?" I quickly responded, "I'm fine." "At Isabella's." "Nothing happened. We'll explain later." His response was immediate. "Nothing happened at Isabella Moretti's place? Call me." Before I could reply, I heard the elevator doors open. Isabella strode in, dressed impeccably in a black pantsuit, speaking rapid Italian into her phone. She spotted me by the windows and her expression warmed immediately, though she continued her conversation for another minute before ending the call. "You slept well?" she asked, crossing to where I stood. I nodded. "Better than I have in months." "Good." She brushed a kiss against my cheek, the gesture surprisingly domestic, as if we'd been doing this for years. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when you woke. An urgent matter required my attention." "It's fine. Your housekeeper has been very kind. Mrs. Dimitrov takes excellent care of me." She guided me to the dining area where breakfast was being laid out, an impressive spread of pastries, fruit, eggs, and things I couldn't even identify but that smelled incredible. "And now she'll take care of you too." Over breakfast, Isabella outlined her day, meetings until early afternoon, then she would be free. I thought perhaps I could show you my other galleries. Several have spaces opening for exhibitions in the coming months. The implication was clear. She wanted to show my work, to launch my career in ways I'd never dreamed possible. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Isabella, this is happening very fast. Yesterday I was a student struggling to pay tuition. Today you're talking about gallery exhibitions and it feels like, I don't know, like I haven't earned it. Her expression hardened slightly, and I saw steel beneath the warmth. The art world isn't a meritocracy, Ethan. Talent means nothing without opportunity and connections. I'm offering both. Because you what? Like my paintings? Like me? I met her gaze directly, needing to understand. She reached across the table, took my hand in hers, her thumb stroking across my knuckles with hypnotic rhythm. You're something precious I found unexpectedly. Something I want to protect and nurture and yes, possess. Her grip tightened slightly. Is that so difficult to accept? When it comes from someone like you? Yes. Someone like me, she repeated, a dangerous edge entering her voice. And what am I in your eyes, Ethan? I didn't look away, didn't soften my honesty. Powerful. Dangerous. Someone who takes what she wants and eliminates obstacles. Someone people fear. I paused. Someone I'm drawn to despite all the warning signs telling me to run. Isabella's grip on my hand tightened almost painfully, then relaxed. At least you're honest. She studied me for a long moment. My world is complicated, Ethan. There are aspects of my business, my family, that would disturb you. But I can promise you this, what I feel for you is real. Unexpected, inconvenient, but real. What do you feel for me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She considered this, her thumb still making slow circles against my hand. In my experience, time is not the most reliable measure of connection. I've known people for decades whom I understand less than I understand you after these few days. That doesn't answer my question. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. No, it doesn't. She released my hand and stood. Come with me. I want to show you something. Curious, I followed her through the apartment to a door I hadn't noticed the previous night. It required another key card to open, revealing a private study. Unlike the modern aesthetic of the rest of her home, this room was old-world, leather-bound books lining the walls, a massive antique desk, and the scent of aged paper and wood polish. Isabella crossed to a painting mounted behind her desk, a small, dark piece depicting a young man with haunted eyes standing before a burning building. The style was centuries old, Renaissance perhaps, but the emotion in the subject's face felt startlingly modern. My grandfather, she said, watching my reaction, painted in 1944 after he fled the Nazis who burned his family's home in northern Italy. I moved closer, studying the details, the subtle reflection of flames in his eyes, the way his hands were both clenched and protective, defensive and defiant. It's extraordinary, I whispered. He was 19. Alone, his family murdered, with nothing but his wits to keep him alive. Her voice softened with something I'd never heard from her, vulnerability, perhaps even grief. He met my grandmother a month later. She was a young resistance fighter with connections to the underground. They married within 6 weeks. That's very fast, I observed. When you find something worth protecting in a world determined to destroy everything beautiful, you don't hesitate. She turned to face me fully. My grandfather said he knew within moments of meeting her that she would either save him or destroy him. Sometimes, Ethan, the heart recognizes what the mind would question. The parallel was unmistakable, and my heart began to race. I swallowed hard. And did she save him? They saved each other. Isabella's gaze was intense, unwavering. They built a new life in America. Created a family, an empire. Everything I have began with that moment of recognition between them, that instant of knowing. Is that what this is? I asked, gesturing between us. Recognition? I believe so. She moved closer, her hand coming up to trace the line of my jaw. When I caught you that night, when I held you in my arms, something shifted in me. Something I can't explain rationally, something that doesn't respond to logic or reason. That's not very reassuring coming from a woman in your position, I said, trying to inject some lightness into the heavy moment. Don't you need to be rational, calculating? In business, yes. In matters of the heart. She shrugged slightly. Even I must surrender to forces beyond my control sometimes. The vulnerability in that admission struck me more powerfully than any declaration of feeling could have. Isabella Moretti, admitting there were things she couldn't control, forces stronger than her will. It humanized her in a way nothing else had. You still haven't told me what you whispered that night, I said softly. Her expression became guarded, walls rising. Perhaps because I'm not sure you're ready to hear it. I'm stronger than I look. I'm well aware. Her fingers moved from my jaw to the pulse point at my throat, and I knew she could feel my racing heartbeat. Your heart is racing. You make me nervous. Good. She leaned closer, and I could smell her perfume, feel the heat radiating from her body. Nervousness is appropriate when standing at the edge of something life-changing. This time, I was the one who initiated the kiss, rising slightly to press my lips to hers. Isabella responded immediately, her arms encircling me, drawing me against her body with controlled urgency that made me feel both cherished and claimed. Unlike the tentative exploration of our first kiss in the limousine, this was deeper, more demanding, a claiming on both our parts, an acknowledgement of what was building between us. When we broke apart, her eyes had darkened to that molten honey that made my stomach tighten with want. Stay with me today, she said, her voice rough with barely controlled desire. The meetings can wait. They can all wait. I hesitated, torn between desire and caution, between the life I'd known and this new world opening before me. I have classes. Skip them. Her hands traced down my spine, settled possessively at the small of my back, pulling me closer. Just for today. Let the world wait. The recklessness of it appealed to something in me I hadn't known existed, the desire to throw caution aside, to dive headlong into whatever this was, consequences be damned. Just for today, I agreed, and her smile transformed her face, warming features that were usually so controlled and austere. I'll make some calls. We spent the day in a bubble of intimacy that felt surreal, like something from a dream I was afraid to wake from. Isabella showed me her private collection of art, pieces she kept for herself, not for display. Each one came with a story, a memory, a piece. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, my childhood in a small Illinois town, my dreams for my art, books we'd read, places we wanted to see. She ordered lunch delivered from some exclusive restaurant, and we ate on her balcony overlooking the park, the city spread below us like a kingdom. Afterwards, she showed me her extensive library, pulling volumes of art books I'd only seen behind glass in university collections, rare and precious. These are for reference, she said, placing a book of Renaissance sketches in my hands with surprising care. Feel free to use anything here whenever you want. My home is your home now. The casualness of the offer, as if I would naturally be spending enough time here to make use of her library, wasn't lost on me. Isabella spoke of us as if we were already established, as if my integration into her life was inevitable, a foregone conclusion. Part of me wanted to resist this assumption, to assert my independence, to slow down this runaway train we were riding. But another part, the part that had always felt unseen, unvalued, invisible, basked in her focused attention, in being treated as if I mattered, as if I was worth this kind of care. As evening approached, Isabella received a call that made her expression darken, transformation instant and complete. She spoke in rapid Italian, her tone hardening with each exchange, becoming someone different, colder, more dangerous. When she hung up, the warmth I'd witnessed all day had vanished, replaced by cold calculation that reminded me exactly who she was, what she was capable of. I need to go out, she said, already reaching for her jacket with sharp, efficient movements. A situation requires my personal attention. Is everything okay? I asked, though I could see it wasn't. She paused, considering her words carefully. Business complications. Nothing for you to worry about. She crossed to me, placed a gentle kiss on my forehead that contrasted sharply with the ice in her voice moments before. My driver will take you home if you wish, or you're welcome to stay. I may be late. I thought of my tiny apartment, of Marcus's inevitable interrogation, of the cramped bed and thin walls. Then I thought of this sanctuary with its library and art and silence, with the lingering warmth of the day we'd spent together. I'll stay, I decided. If that's really okay. Relief flickered across her face, there and gone. More than okay. She hesitated, then added, Ethan, there are aspects of my business that it's better you don't know details about. Safer for you that way. The reminder of who she really was, what she really did, sent a chill through me. I'd spent the day with Isabella the art collector, the intelligent conversationalist, the attentive companion. But now Isabella the crime boss was reasserting herself, and I saw the divide between her two worlds. I understand, I said quietly, and I did. Some things were better left unknown. Her eyes searched mine, looking for judgment or fear. Finding neither, she nodded once, satisfied. I'll have Mrs. Dimitrov prepare dinner for you. Don't wait up. After she left, the apartment felt emptier despite its spacious dimensions. I wandered through the rooms, examining artwork, trailing my fingers over books and furniture that cost more than I'd make in years. Eventually, I settled in the library with a rare volume of Caravaggio paintings and lost myself in the master's dramatic use of light and shadow, trying not to think about where Isabella had gone or what she was doing. Mrs. Dimitrov brought a tray with dinner, simple but delicious pasta in a cream sauce, a glass of wine, fresh bread that melted on my tongue. After eating, I curled up on the leather sofa with another book, surrounded by the scent of old paper and leather. Despite my intention to wait for Isabella's return, exhaustion claimed me, and I drifted off with the book still open on my chest. I woke to the sensation of being lifted, strong arms cradling me. Disoriented, I blinked awake to find Isabella carrying me toward the bedroom, her face softened in the dim light. "You're back," I murmured sleepily. "I told you not to wait up," she chided gently, pushing open the door to the guest room with her shoulder. I didn't mean to fall asleep. As my senses returned fully, I noticed she'd changed clothes. Her new shirt was impeccable, but a faint metallic scent clung to her, copper and salt, something that made my stomach turn when I thought too hard about what it might be. I chose not to examine it too closely, chose not to ask questions I didn't want answered. She laid me on the bed with surprising gentleness, as if I were something precious that might break. "Sleep, Ethan. We'll talk tomorrow." "Stay," I found myself saying, catching her hand before she could straighten. "Please." Isabella went completely still, her expression unreadable in the darkness. "Are you sure?" I nodded, shifting over to make room, my heart pounding at my own boldness. "I don't want to be alone." After a moment's hesitation, she removed her shoes and jacket and stretched out beside me on the bed, still fully clothed. I turned into her, resting my head on her chest, listening to the steady beat of her heart, finding comfort in the solid warmth of her. Her arm came around me, protective and possessive at once, holding me close. "This wasn't my intention when I brought you here," she said quietly into the darkness. "I know." And somehow I did know. Despite her reputation, despite the obvious attraction between us, Isabella had been careful not to pressure me, not to take advantage of the power imbalance between us. We lay in comfortable silence for several minutes, and I felt safe in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Finally, I gathered the courage to ask the question that had been haunting me since that first night. "Isabella, when I fainted at the gallery and you caught me, what did you whisper?" Her body tensed almost imperceptibly beneath mine. For so long, I thought she wouldn't answer, that she would deflect or change the subject. Then, her voice so low I barely caught it, "Mine." I lifted my head to look at her face, trying to read her expression in the dim light filtering through the windows. "Mine? What does that mean?" In the shadows, her expression was solemn, intense, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. In my family, there's a story passed down through generations. A belief. Her hand stroked slowly up and down my spine, soothing and claiming at once. That when you find the one person meant for you, something inside recognizes them instantly, beyond reason or logic. My grandfather described it to my mother, who described it to me. Soulmates? I asked, skeptical despite the intimacy of the moment. Nothing so poetic, she corrected. More primal than that. A recognition at a level beyond conscious thought, beyond choice. Her eyes held mine in the darkness. When I caught you, when I held you unconscious in my arms, something in me responded. A certainty I can't explain logically or rationalize away. She paused and I held my breath, waiting. Mine, she said again, the word deliberate this time. Meant to be part of me. Meant to be claimed and protected and cherished. Mine. The confession should have frightened me with its intensity, its presumption, its possessiveness. Instead, it resonated somewhere deep inside, answering a question I hadn't known to ask, filling a space I hadn't known was empty. That's why you've done all this, I whispered. The money, the clothes, the galleries. Because of some family belief about recognition. No, she said firmly, her hand cupping my face. I've done all this because you deserve it. Because your talent is extraordinary and should be recognized. The belief merely opened my eyes to you when I might otherwise have passed by without seeing. Her thumb traced my lower lip, and I shivered at the gentleness of the touch. I would never force you into anything, Ethan. I may be many things, some of them dark, some of them dangerous, but I would never force you. You can leave right now. I'll have my driver take you home, and we'll keep this strictly professional. I'll still help your career because you deserve that help. But nothing more. I believed her. Despite every rational objection, despite knowing so little about the darker aspects of her life, I believed in her sincerity, in the genuineness of her offer to let me go. I should be running in the opposite direction, I whispered. Why aren't you? I considered the question seriously, examining my feelings with the same careful attention I gave to my art. Because when I'm with you, I feel seen. Like someone finally notices me, not just my art or what I can offer, but me. The person beneath everything else. Isabella's thumb traced my lower lip again, her eyes dark and intense. I see you, Ethan Cross. All of you. Every beautiful, complicated piece of you. She leaned closer, her breath warm against my lips. And everything I am responds to everything you are. This time when we kissed, it was different, deeper, with an underlying urgency that hadn't been there before, an acknowledgement of what we were choosing, what we were building together. Her hands tangled in my hair as mine explored the solid warmth of her body through her clothes. We moved together as if we'd done this countless times, as if our bodies already knew the language of each other, speaking in touches and sighs. Clothes were discarded slowly, reverently. Each new revelation of skin was met with gentle touches, unhurried exploration, as if we had all the time in the world. When we finally came together, skin against skin, it was with a sense of inevitability, as if we were always meant to find each other this way, to connect in this most intimate manner. Afterward, lying tangled in silk sheets and each other's limbs, Isabella held me close, her heartbeat strong and steady beneath my ear. What happens now? I asked, tracing lazy patterns on her skin. Whatever you want, she said, surprising me. I won't pressure you, Ethan. It needs to be your choice. Always your choice. I propped myself up on an elbow to look at her, saw vulnerability in her face that few people probably ever witnessed. The great Isabella Moretti, leaving a decision to someone else. I'm shocked. A smile tugged at her lips. Only for you. Her expression grew serious. My life is complicated. There are aspects of my family, my business, that will never be completely legitimate. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. I know what your family does, Isabella. I'm not naive. You know rumors, headlines, she corrected gently. The reality is both less and more dramatic than what you've heard. She tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I can promise you safety, protection, everything material you could want. But I can't promise a simple life. There will be dangers, complications, things I can't always explain. I thought about my existence before her, the struggle to pay rent, to buy supplies, to be noticed in a world that valued connections over talent. Then I thought about these past few days, not just the luxury and opportunity, but the feeling of being valued, being seen, being claimed in the best possible way. I don't need simple, I said finally. I just need real. I need honesty. I need you to promise that what we have isn't just some game, some passing interest. Isabella's eyes darkened with emotion. What we have is the most real thing in my world right now, Ethan. Perhaps the only completely real thing. She pulled me back into her arms, and I went willingly, surrendering to the warmth and safety I found there. I don't do passing interests. When I claim something, I keep it. When I protect something, I protect it fiercely. And you, she pressed a kiss to my forehead. You're mine now. If you'll have me. I should have been frightened by the possessiveness in her words, the absolute certainty with which she claimed me. Instead, I felt something in me settle, as if a piece I hadn't known was missing had finally clicked into place. I'll have you, I whispered against her skin. All of you, complicated and dangerous and possessive. I'll have all of it. Then you have me, she murmured back. All of me. For as long as you'll let me keep you. We fell asleep entwined, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't dream of falling. I dreamed of being caught, of being held, of being claimed. And in my dreams I whispered back, yours,